All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Adam Puzach on the show. And Adam is the CEO of Pack Logix. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome to have you. So again, he's the president and CEO of Pack Logix, a Milwaukee-based contract packager specializing in the filling of petroleum products. Before making the transition to CEO, Adam held the position of CFO, leading the company's financial team. Prior to his time at Pack Logix, Adam was a CFO of the Milwaukee Athletic Club and worked in corporate banking, specializing in distressed assets in the turnaround division. He will be graduating from Harvard University in the fall with a master's degree in management, and in his spare time enjoys spending time with his wife and young daughter. So Adam, again, great to have you on the show. No doubt this is going to be a great conversation. Turnaround, distressed assets, distressed companies is an amazing topic. Before we dive into that in your journey, what's one interesting fact that not many people know about you?
I take 1 week a year with how busy I am with everything else that's going on to completely detach, and I spend it in the most remote place I can find. So we backpack out, whether it's Alaska or Colorado, we find somewhere where there's no service, and I spend it completely off the grid, which I think is rare for my executive counterparts.
Yeah, totally. A complete, total unplug. No email, no cell phone, no nothing.
Yep, just totally recharge, get away from everything. Carry a sat phone for emergency, but otherwise we just try and get away.
Well, if you don't have the ability to trust other people in emergency circumstances, you don't really have a company anyways, man.
Right.
I mean, that's my opinion. I got taught that lesson a long time ago. So do you go by yourself?
Sometimes I have. I also go with a couple buddies sometimes, so it kind of depends on the year. But we always find somewhere cool, kind of off the beaten path, and go out and enjoy the outdoors.
Somewhere different every year?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we try and change it up.
Do you do summertime?
Usually in the fall. Usually coincides with the hunting season. And so we get out somewhere off the beaten path and just enjoy some time in the fall in the great outdoors.
Are you actually hunting too, or?
Yeah, usually, yeah.
Okay.
So we chase all sorts of different things, whether it be elk, antelope, all sorts of stuff.
Very cool, man. I have not at the point in this current role that I'm at where I've completely unplugged. This is more of a solopreneur thing right now, but I 100% get it, man. I go and chase, throw sticks at arrows or elk for every fall, and so I love it too. Yeah. Where are you going this year? Any idea?
The goal is Wyoming. We'll see if that works out or not. Got to see if we get tags.
So, cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. If you get something, send me pics.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. So tell us about your Pack Logix. Tell us about your company, man. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so we're a relatively young firm. We're a conglomeration of multiple companies that have been brought together basically through private equity, and we've really hyper specialized in a niche market related to petroleum. So we are petroleum experts that help people contract package for whether that's going into a bottle, sometimes it's going into tubes or cartridges. We do greases and fluids and all the different things that might be involved in a lubricant of some kind. So we really pride ourselves on service. I think contract packaging itself has become a numbers game where everyone's looking for the cheapest game in town.
Yeah, it's being commoditized.
Yeah, absolutely. Same with oil too, right? Everyone wants the cheapest product. And so, we've really tried really hard to become an absolute expert in what we do. And we only offer products we believe in. And then we're going to give them a really high level of service. I'm never going to be the cheapest option, but you're going to keep coming back because you're getting what you expect every single time. And our team can execute and get it to you on time every time. So it's a different approach, right? We certainly have competitors. We'll give you that cheap option, and you're going to get cheap service that comes along with it. So we try and differentiate in that way.
When did you start? Well, you didn't start Pack Logix, right? Nope. Okay.
No. Yeah. So I came in because the company needed some help. So I came in about 5 years ago. It was purchased in 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. We're a conglomeration of a small Milwaukee company as well as an offshoot of Phillips 66 that was purchased. Okay. So the collective companies have been around for 75 years, but Pack Logix itself is just about 6. So relatively new, but a lot of historic customers from those original organizations. They all were similar to who we are, right? They all were relatively niche brands that were trying to help the smaller guy, right? Small to medium sized product. And we're there to help people through that, what can be a very complicated process of getting your item packaged. Often I think the big conglomerates, make it seem as though it's really simple, right? It's just going in a bottle. But at the end of the
Mm,
day, there's so many different things that can change in a package.
mm,
And if you don't necessarily know what you want, or you don't necessarily know what you don't know when you're going out to market,
right, right.
some of that stuff, right? And we can help you through that process,
Sure. Johari's window. They don't know what they don't know.
right?
So how did you get to be a turnaround specialist? How did this even evolve?
Yeah. So I when I came out of college originally, we were still living through kind of the dredges of 2008. Uh, there was a lot of companies left over that maybe made it through the initial part of the recession,
Right, right.
but their business really wasn't built to maintain itself after that.
Mm,
I was working in banking at the time, and I was with a bank called BMO, which is pretty big in Canada, but they
mm,
had acquired a local bank here in Milwaukee,
yeah.
and they had a whole bunch of credits that either needed to go or needed to turn themselves around. And so I
Mm,
became very intimately involved in, for one, the bank's interest, and then working with consultants to try and solve their issues. Some of them were not savable, right? At the end of the day, I think we saw a lot of businesses that weren't capable of the change,
mm,
or weren't necessarily built for what the new market was going to bear,
right, right.
um, and kept getting more and more involved with my clients. And I learned I love a turnaround. And so I really enjoy the process. I think it's fun to go find what that major change has to be. I think
Yeah.
the reality is most major turnarounds are a very different business when you're done.
Okay.
And so, you go in and you've got one completely unique product line. It might be something totally different when you're done, but it's fun to
Right.
find that path out, right? And there's probably 30 of them, but it's fun to find the one that works. So, it requires creativity. You can't just go in and use the same set of rules. Sure, business is pretty simple, right? You got to make money at the end of the day. It's a math
Sure,
problem,
sure. Yeah.
but there's a lot of creative processes that can go in between there, and it just makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. Very cool. So so you got you were in banking and you
Hmm.
were turning around, you saw a lot of companies this was going on,
Yeah,
and that's when the Milwaukee Athletic Club, is that the
yeah.
one okay.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
I got kind of tapped on the shoulder to help out. I was on their board,
uh okay.
um, and they were in a lot of trouble. That was a company that was kind of heading down the path towards bankruptcy,
Okay.
and it was a perfect example of someone's product who hasn't changed yet. They coming out of 2008, people weren't spending money on private clubs, and that's what this was. It was a private hospitality
Oh,
club,
right, right.
and you had an aging building that required a lot of capital to correct that issue, and really no interest in the people who were willing to give the capital to put it in there, because there wasn't any belief that the management could handle it. So I stepped up and took the opportunity to go run my own turnaround for once. I was kind of at the sidelines the whole time.
Mm,
um, it was an interesting change. That's a business that really required to put in this particular case, $62 million into a $10 million company to make it into something that people wanted to spend money on again.
mm,
And you have a product there that a private club is an expensive accessory, right? That
yeah.
somebody has.
Yeah. Yeah.
People have to feel special, right? The
Right.
place has to feel special, and we had to spend money to fix that problem. Um, Money didn't solve it by itself, right? There was a lot of process that had to change, and people that had to change. Um, but at the end of the day, it was really creative financing, right? Putting together a package that made sense for all the stakeholders, as well as putting efficiency into a business that's inherently inefficient, right? When you have
Mm,
a private club is built around the idea that a member gets what they want when they want it.
right. Very,
That's
yeah. Very
it's not
high
a margin
touch.
game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so where do you find that margin, right? You have to find it somewhere. It's all about being efficient, right? And it's funny to me of now I'm in the land of widgets, right? We make millions of bottles a year of oil. At the end of the day, the widget is the same. Whether I'm selling hospitality or I'm selling you a bottle, at the end of the day, there's a whole bunch of pieces that went into making that bottle. There's a whole bunch of pieces that went into making that experience you're going to have in a private club.
Yeah, totally.
And each of those have costs, right? So it's figuring out how can I do that in the most efficient way possible, giving you the experience that you want at the end of the day, and making it where you want to pay for it, right? That you see value in it, that you're going to want to put some money down to actually pay for that end product. So it's all the same game, right? Even whether you're in hospitality or widgets or whatever it is, but just making sure that math problem makes sense at the end of the day.
So what are some of the things that you guys did at Milwaukee Athletic Club to be able to cross that bridge?
Hey, a big one was a large change in staff. That was a
Mm,
great example of a business, and not everybody always likes that answer, right? Sometimes people have to go,
mhm,
and we had to do quite a bit of changeover. We had employees that were in that business for decades, We're really set in their ways. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
This is the way we always did it.
Right. Yeah. We tried that once. It didn't work. But, well, let's try it a different way. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's so key. It's a perfect example of where if you can lay out a path for someone of here's how we can solve your problem. Right. We think we know that these business principles work in this particular way. If you want to hop on the bandwagon, right, we're going to help you. We're going to teach you the new way and show you how to do it.
Right.
If you don't, neither one of us is going to be happy. Right. I'm not going to be happy with your performance, and you're not going to be happy working for it because you don't believe in it. And I think it's one of those things of where if you can help people understand that goal at the end of the day, right, where are we both trying to get? What are the steps that we believe will actually get us there? At least try it, give it a shot, right? And if we're wrong, we're going to pivot and do something different.
Gotcha.
And so that's a lot of what we did, right? We went through those people and said, here's what your day looks like today, right? Here's what it needs to look like tomorrow. Here's how we're going to change that, right? Whether that's buying inventory, of how do you look at your options for where you buy your inventory from and decide what's the best price or the best cost? How are you weighing quality versus cost at the end of the day? And teaching those things, especially in a hospitality environment, that's super critical. How much inventory are you going to hold, right? And walking somebody through that process of deciding how much inventory should they hold at any given time and what makes sense from a cost structure. When you're teaching that to people who haven't had to live in that environment for a long time, right, there's a lot of pushback.
Sure.
I think can you hold those people's hands enough, right, to help them see the light and see where it can go? And if you can all be really successful together. And if you can't, right, it's better for everybody if we all move on, right? Then great, let's go find a way to make it work, right? And if you don't want to be a part of it, that's okay, right? But we're going to give you an opportunity to do so. But so, that particular deal revolved a lot around just some change that needed to happen with the organization from that perspective. And then two, we changed the business model fundamentally. So we ended up, it was a 501c7, which is a subsect of nonprofits that's really more similar to a for-profit business model. But it allows basically some of the revenues to be untaxable. And so we got rid of a piece of that model and brought in a developer to bring a for-profit entity involved. We sold a bunch of apartments to fund a huge portion of the building that we weren't using. We had over 200,000 square feet. We only used 150,000 of it.
Oh, wow.
Let's monetize a piece, right? Put some money into that building and bring recurring revenue in. And then fundamentally change the service environment of what people were receiving. So we really brought a high level of service by engaging the right people, going out and finding the talent that was required to put those people in place, make sure people were experiencing what they should be experiencing when they go to a private club. And it was effective, right? We had more members, people came on, we put a ton of money into the business. And, I think one thing that I've seen overall, that restructures and turnarounds are expensive. And they're expensive in human capital for one, right? It's hard on your employees.
Sure.
It's also expensive from the same way you got to spend money to make money sometimes. And in a turnaround, when you have none, that's a hard concept. And you need to be able to prove that to your banking partners, right? To your investors of why is it the time to put in more capital now when things aren't working? And if you can set out that plan that shows here's what the capital is going to do, right? Here's how it's going to change your business fundamentally. And here's what the plan is. And then set metrics as to how we're going to measure that together. When you meet those metrics, it's easy to get more capital down the road, right? And if you set that plan out together, right, then everyone's more comfortable putting the money in.
You mean together with the investors or with the lender? Okay. So did you, the $62 million to pump into a $10 million company, that is definitely, you have to really convince people. You have to have a really good plan. So was it a mix of did you do asset-based lenders? Did you do investors? Did you do?
Yeah, so that particular deal had a combination. It had investors, a huge chunk of it, and I think to be fair, right, which really bloats the number. So we used historic tax credits. And in this particular scenario, we had a really aged building that was on the historic register, and there's a lot of money involved. And so we were able to access that money, which was really helpful. It was over a third of the financing.
Nice.
And that solves a lot of problems, right? It adds complications when you're doing the deal.
Sure. More inspections. You have to do certain things in a certain way, I imagine.
Yeah. But that government funding made that deal possible. So it was a really good opportunity for everybody.
Very cool.
And it's in finding the right partners for that, right? We had to go out and find the right development team who wanted to take on that deal. But we did, and it was very successful.
And I think you said shortly after that, you said a PE firm actually brought you guys on?
Yeah. So PE firm was relatively involved in our deal there.
Okay. Okay.
And they're the ones who actually manage my current deal now.
Oh, nice. Okay. Awesome.
So that's where our connection came in there. And, they were looking for help on Pack Logix, right? They had a different scenario, right? But one where they weren't meeting expectations, and needed to change the general structure of the business, right? And so that's really where my transition to Pack Logix came from, was because of their early involvement in the Milwaukee Athletic Club.
Yeah, very cool. And I think when we were talking, when we talk about that, being a turnaround company, you talked about how can I impact or help other CEOs or leaders coming up, and you had said, really change management it is something we could definitely talk about. And we even talked about, if I'm coming in as a turnaround company, or just, let's say you've just been named CEO of a turnaround company, right? Yeah. Ready, set, go. What do you do first? I know we talked a little bit about, staff. Well, what's the next thing you're going to start diving into in order of priority?
Yeah. I think number one is cash flow, right? At the end of the day, especially most turnarounds are crimped by cash pretty quickly. And you need to immediately figure out what type of runway do you actually have. Because if it's 1 month, 2 months, right, you better figure out your financing for that now before you try and go down any other path, because you're gonna need the help of someone to get you through that. If you have 3 months, 6 months, a year, right, before you're gonna run out of cash, you can have a little bit more time, right? Yeah. And we can pause and really think through our strategic goal at the end of the day. What are we trying to achieve?
Yeah.
So, first for me, it's a deep dive into cash flow. I recommend all businesses, whether you're in a turnaround or not, is doing a 13-week cash flow statement all the time. Those are things that are readily available online. And I think they help people see issues in their cash flow so much earlier than they normally would, because most people are managing cash, on a day-to-day basis within their AR department.
What's in their bank account?
Yeah, like how much do I have, right?
Yeah,
well, what do you think you're going to have 2 months from now, right?
Exactly.
What is that going to be?
Get a forecast.
And if you take care, you can figure it out. And then it's a different discussion, right? When you go to a partner or a lender, you say, hey, I'm going to have a cash crunch in 2 months. That's a very different discussion than, hey, I'm overdrawn today and I don't know what to do. And so I think that forefront thinking of letting people know there's a problem before the problem's all the way there is super helpful to gaining that trust back of your partners. Because chances are in a turnaround, your vendors are mad at you, your bank's mad at you, right? Your investors
right. Yeah.
How do you get that trust back? And so much of that is being able to show that you understand what's going on and why it's happening. And that you have to get to that point first before you can even start solving what's causing those issues. Just knowing what's going to happen next. And for me, that second piece, once cash flow is under control, it's what is that strategic goal that you're going to work towards? And I think it's different in everybody's situation, right? But it might be that fundamentally you don't have the right product line today, right? Maybe it's that there just isn't enough market for who you are. Maybe it's that you have the perfect product, right? But you just don't charge the right price for it, right? There's not enough margin there. But identifying what it is that is that core issue that is causing 60% of the problem, right? Because there's probably 100 problems. But find that one and really identify that goal, and then put everything you can to solve one at a time. I look at it in the same way as the way people explain to individuals to solve their credit card debt, right? Go pay off one, get rid of one piece of debt first, right? And then let's go attack the next one, right? It's going to snowball, and people see traction. And when people see traction internally, they want to work for you to get that next thing done.
Yeah.
When you start solving those wins, people will keep moving forward to do that. And your employees will like it too, right? Because your employees will see you're starting to put out a fire, right? Okay, you put out fire number 1. How can we help you do number 2? They might not even trust you yet at number 2, but after you've done 3 in a row, all of a sudden everybody starts getting on the bandwagon, right? Of like, oh, that worked, right? Maybe they're right. Maybe we should go down that path. So I think you got to start knocking things off one at a time, slowly and surely, methodically, and doing that.
Yeah, and so you're rallying your team around one problem. All brains, our minds are focused on solving this one problem.
And I have a thing I institute in the company is called task force, and task force usually ends up getting a meeting once a week of, hey, let's get 30 things on the list, right? What are all the problems? Prioritize, pick one, and let's delegate out tell everybody who's to me, and you got to report on it next week, right? You got to tell me what your progress is. I don't care if you didn't get anywhere, but you're going to come back and tell me that you didn't get anywhere. You're going to tell the team that. Pretty soon, people start wanting to get it done, right? They want to see that move forward. And they're going to come and bring ideas. And it's okay if you don't know what the next step is. Let's talk about it in the meeting, right? You got 10 people sitting there that are probably all really smart, intelligent business people that might see something you're missing. Well, let's talk about it
a little bit.
And just push forward, right? And try and find a solution. There's no wrong answers in a turnaround, right? At the end of the day, you're failing. You got to try something, right? And I think so often we get analysis paralysis, right? We say, oh my God, how are we going to solve all these different things? Well, why don't you try one, right? At this point, you're already going down. Give it a shot, see what you can do. And if you continually make small chunks of progress, right? And you're upfront with all the stakeholders at the beginning, people are going to want to work with you through that change.
Yeah, I love it. So trying lots of different things and just continually making small progress, because now you're earning trust. You're not only earning trust with your team, but you're earning trust with, your extended team, the lenders, investors, and they're going to be more confident about, hey, if you need a little bit more money a little later on, they're willing to do that, or whatever that is, or stick it out, right, and not force some sale at some point, or fire sale.
Right. Yeah, we got to avoid that, right? That's the part we're all avoiding. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very cool. No, I mean, there's businesses in today's market. A lot of businesses are over leveraged, or something happened internally. They're putting something on consignment. They did some kind of a misappropriation, and they're in a lot of trouble. And especially now, I mean, we have an impending recession coming up, 2024, or so many say, right? There's going to be a lot of companies who are going to be needing some help.
Yeah.
And do you do this outside of, do you offer this as a consulting for other companies outside of your core business right now, Adam?
I do sit on a couple boards.
Okay.
And so I do that for people, right? Which is, you get a quarterly check-in, right? An occasional phone call.
Yeah.
Always happy to help in that manner. I have a feeling at some point down the road, that will be my path, right? I love watching it fix, right? I love seeing the team get engaged and see.
I mean, I can see the passion. I can hear it in your tone, like this is what excites you, like taking a company that's hurting because you know how to turn it around. You know the right levels to pull, the financial levels to get things in place, and then working with the team. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So another thing we had kind of talked about was when I asked you what's the biggest failure that you had learned from as a CEO, and you had talked about not keeping up with inflation on that backside of COVID. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think hyperinflation caught a lot of us by surprise, right? It was interesting when COVID first initially happened. Our PE group and other roundtables that I sit on, we all talked about what we thought inflation was going to do.
Right.
And there was a different opinion of every person that sat around that table. And there was a few people that said, this is going to go on for a long time, and it's going to get way more expensive than it is today. And I wish I would have listened personally. Right? I think we all saw how out of hand it got very quickly. And when you couple that with the supply chain challenges that happened, that we really had no buying power anymore. It was whoever had the product, not just necessarily that I couldn't get the product from my normal vendor, right? And I'm going to pay a little bit more. There was only one option to get the product in a lot of cases, and you were paying whatever it cost. And it was, do I have to shut my line down, or am I going to have to pay the premium to make it continue? And I personally had taken the approach, I thought at some point it was going to correct sooner than it did. And it really made a challenge for our business. The prices continued to rise. I think it's no secret to anyone that oil prices went up dramatically, which is a huge raw material in my business. As well as resin prices, which is the key material in bottle making.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just went through the roof. And, had we seen that ahead of time and raised prices continually, instead of saying, we're going to hold and try and keep our customer base, right? Make sure we don't overprice anybody at the moment. We would have had a much better year following COVID. And unfortunately, we said, no, let's hold prices, make sure we don't lose anybody, make sure we keep everybody happy. Like we talk about, I'm a service first business, right? That was the plan. But the reality was that was here to stay. And so we had a 6-month time when we had to raise prices at that moment, already had orders, in the till. They're already there. We already agreed to pricing, and we couldn't raise them, right? And we had to sell a bunch of product at a loss. And that was a huge error for us. And it, I think from the same way, when you're seeing that environment change, we were so hyper focused of how do we make sure we don't lose any customers, right? Everyone's talking about how sales are down. Well, that was the wrong approach, right? At the end of the day, the math problem that we talk about when we come in to fix that math problem in a turnaround is that the margin doesn't make sense.
Margins weren't there. Yeah.
And if it's not there, you shouldn't be doing it at the end of the day. And so, we should have raised early on. And it was a big hit for us. And it took a long time to correct. And some of that is because of the way our business works today. We take a lot of orders. That might be blanket orders that, are for the next 6 months of shipments.
Right.
And they're at fixed pricing. We don't do that anymore, right? We've changed that model, and now we're taking one-time POs. That was probably an important change for us internally, anyways.
Yeah.
And it was a fearful time, right? People were moving to dual sourcing because they were concerned about supply chain. You wanted to make sure you were still that dual source. You were at least one of the people in the conversation. But we shouldn't have done that at the sacrifice of margin, right? We should have made sure that we maintained that. And I think, it was one of my bigger missteps in my career of not seeing the writing on the wall. There was enough people saying that inflation was here to stay, and we should have gotten ahead of it. And I think, we've learned, and we certainly won't do that again, but it's so important to keep up with what's going on economically and making sure that you're taking that data set and making your decisions accordingly, because the information was there. It just was a lack of analysis on what was going on around us. That we should listen.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's great that you're humble enough to be able to look back and talk about it now, because I guarantee any company you're with going forward is not going to have that problem again. You're not going to experience that margin erosion. And it also goes back to, what you talked about before is providing that value over and above the commoditized company. And what you were kind of talking about, that's the mindset of a commoditized company. Oh, I don't want to lose our customers and we have no value. And so it sounds like you've really carved out and really provide value such that price isn't even a concern. I mean, it's a concern, right? You can't be overly high, but if the value more than compensates for that compared to your commoditized competitors,
right,
it's a non-concern.
Right. And I think it's such a big part of actually living what your mission says, right? If we say we're going to be that best service, what does that mean, right? You actually have to live that. And I think it's one thing a lot of people say they're a service company, right? Oh, so we can charge for it. Well, are you really, right? Do you really get really good service?
Right. Yeah.
And I think we check ourselves on that all the time. And I'm sure we have experiences for people that are less than stellar.
Sure.
Oh, you got to correct that, learn from those. And how are you going to be better going forward? I think that's a common misstep people fall into.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Well, hey, man. So question for you on if you were going to hire a CEO to take the reins for your company, what's the one book that you would require he or she read before taking over for you?
So I absolutely love The Goal. A process of ongoing improvement, I think, is the whole title.
Okay. Yeah.
It is a book I think everybody should read, and I actually make all of my managers read it.
Wow.
On board. So if you're going to come and work here, you're going to have to read that book in your first quarter. It's just a part of onboarding. And I think it's something that it breaks down so well the process of change within an organization. And it really helps people understand what are the constraints that are really, pushing at your business all the time, and how are you going to overcome those? And how are you all going to, as a team, get together and solve those problems? One thing that I take away from that book is that it's everyone needs to look at everything like a pit crew mentality, right? How do we as a team together right, attack that and do it in 2 seconds, not 3 seconds? And if you can get people on that path and all working towards the same thing, it becomes fun, right? Then we all want to come and play that same game, and we all want to do it every day. Sometimes you got to make this fun, right? It shouldn't just be a slog.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. I love your concept. Well, two things. I love your concept of thinking of it like a pit crew, right? And it's all about how do we work together to get from 3 down to 2, but also making it fun. And I think that's where a lot of people lack. A lot of leaders forget to make things fun.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta like coming to work, right? We all say we want to do what we love, right? Well, at the end of the day, no, I don't love doing T accounts and accounting, but sometimes you have to do it, right? It's just sure. But if you love working as a team and solving an issue, it can still be fun, right? And
Yeah.
you just got to find those things that make people tick.
Mm. I was just going to ask, what kind of things do you do to make things fun in your company?
A lot of that I think comes down to culture. I'll give you a great example. So we run a manufacturing environment,
Right.
and we have people who everyone says they're driven by money, and I don't believe that's true, right? I think that money is just such a small piece of the pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we actually have now had made big championship belts like they wear in wrestling. It's
Okay.
Pack Logix on them, and it's the crew of the month gets to wear the belt at the end of the month, and they get to
Nice.
keep that on their line, and they put it up there, and they get to show off that they won that belt every single month.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny because at first, people laugh, right? They think it's just kind of a joke, and also you saw people were really scrapping to get the belt, and they all wanted
Ah.
that belt hanging from their line.
It's like an internal competition
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's a trophy, right? At the end of the day, and they all want to pass it around. So then at the end of the year, if you've won the belt the most times, we've now had little Super Bowl rings made that say Pack Logix on them and their best operator, best production employee. And I think it's looking for something that it doesn't have to be a huge monetary value, right? It's show that you care, show that you recognize, right?
Yeah,
And that there
totally.
is a reason to work for it. And that there's some reason that they're coming to work every day and being a part of a team, right? It's not just them; they win that belt as a team, right? It's not just their own personal gain, but they want to show off to each other, right? And so you just got to find what makes your employees tick. It might not be a belt in your business, right? But there's something like that's
Yeah.
going to make people want to come to work every day.
There's lots of ways to make games out of stuff as
Yeah.
well. And that's a very, very popular method and just works, people like having fun. People like
Mhm.
talking shit. People like, giving each other shit about, so, hey, we got this, you don't,
Yeah.
the competition. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, awesome, man. So Adam, I'm going to summarize a couple of my key takeaways. There were so many in here, so it's tough to boil them down, but just, looking at the turnaround model and the change management there, the first thing really to look at is to get the cash flow in line. Just how are we going to turn this thing around from a financial standpoint? So finding a CFO that specializes in turnarounds, or even contacting you if you and maybe point them in the right direction or help them out. But also with that is creating that 13-week statement, that forecasting statement to give your partners and your team confidence. Confidence that we can say what we're going to do and then do what we say, right?
And it's even accomplishing that you understand the problem, right?
There you go. Yeah. What is the problem?
Right.
What is the problem? Well, and that's kind of the next thing is, the cash flow, but then what is that core problem that you're going to solve, and putting a plan together to solve it. Like you said, it could be you don't have the right product. Literally, maybe they don't have the right product, or maybe they don't have the right price. Maybe they're not going after the right audience. Maybe they're not the right geography, maybe not the right marketing model, whatever that is, identify it and then knock them out. And this was one of the most important things you had said, is it's got to be one at a time. Like really rally the team around one thing, knock it out, gain the team's confidence, and then move on to the next. I think that's fantastic. Try and with the team members too, if I remember correctly, get the right team in place. There's going to be people there who have been there for a long time, and we don't need to change it, or we tried that once. And so your comment is, well, let's change it a different way, and make continual progress. And I love this championship belts thing, man. That's a great idea. I love that. Anybody out there, I would steal that if I had a company with a manufacturer or any kind of a company.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's funny. I think I'll do that one everywhere I go.
Yeah, right on.
The championship
Yeah,
belt is a
yeah.
good way to go.
Cool, man. So Adam, if there was one takeaway that you'd really want the audience to absorb from our time together today, what would that be, man?
Well, I think, and I don't know that I even said it, but it's an undertone of it. Be calm and look at the problem, right? Your hair's not on fire. It's okay. You're going to figure it out. But find that problem and just go solve one. And I think you hit it on the head there. Take it one at a time, one day at a time, a team member at a time, and just take it piece by piece. And you'll get through it, right? But you can't look at it all. You're not going to solve it all on day one. So grab the smallest one you can, get the win, move on to the next one, and just keep going down the line.
Very cool, man. And that's great advice, be a change management, because so many people, they look at an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay, well, which part do we eat first? Well, we prioritize it. And so it just gets overwhelming. And so really boiling it down to something that's bite-sized. Awesome, Adam. If any of our listeners wanted to reach out and get a hold of you for any questions about turnaround or for maybe your services or for even your company, how could they do that?
Yeah, A Puzach, which is Puzach,
Okay.
at pack-logix.com.
Awesome.
You're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk.
Cool. Adam, this has been great. Thanks again for being on the show. This has just been a fantastic episode.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. And for the subscribers, please hit the like and subscribe button. Help us spread the word about what we're doing. We're helping the next phase, the next level of leaders and CEOs be that much more successful. And with that, this is your host, Patrick Rogers, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks a lot.